They tell us central banks exist to protect us, to control inflation, to manage growth, to keep our economies stable and prosperous. But what if that isn't the whole truth? What if prosperity itself was never organic, but engineered? Not born from production and innovation, but manufactured through debt, deception, and belief. This is the story of how a handful of institutions quietly built a system that could make entire nations feel rich, even as real wealth drained away. And it begins with a simple question. Who gave them the power to create money from nothing? For thousands of years, money was simple. It represented real things: land, gold, goods, labor. A gold coin had value because it was rare, durable, and hard to fake. It kept rulers honest. You could not mint more gold than you owned. But the human desire for expansion was stronger than honesty. Governments and merchants wanted a way to create wealth faster than nature allowed. So they invented credit, a promise to pay tomorrow for what you want today. At first, it seemed harmless. Merchants in medieval Italy used paper notes as convenient substitutes for gold. Instead of moving metal across borders, they moved promises. But promises are fragile things. Eventually, banks realized that if only a few people ever came to claim their gold, they could issue many more promises than they had metal to back them. That moment was the quiet birth of the illusion, the beginning of money that didn't exist until someone believed in it. Centuries later, this principle became the foundation of central banking. When the Bank of England was founded in 1694, it gave the British government a revolutionary tool. It could borrow money that didn't yet exist, spend it on wars and projects, and repay it later through taxes. A new cycle had begun. Debt became wealth, and the more you borrowed, the more powerful you appeared. The model spread across Europe, then across the world. By the early 20th century, the idea had reached America. The United States, young and ambitious, had resisted central banking for decades. But after a series of financial panics, the argument for stability grew irresistible. In 1913, under the guise of reform, the Federal Reserve was born. It was presented as a public guardian of the economy, but in practice, it was a coalition of private banks with the power to create the nation's money supply. From that point onward, every boom and bust in the American economy would be filtered through the hands of central bankers. The illusion began to grow stronger. Governments could now issue bonds, borrow endlessly, and finance anything from wars to welfare without immediately raising taxes. The limit was no longer gold, it was confidence. As long as people trusted the currency, the system could expand forever. After World War II, the world entered its most ambitious monetary experiment yet. The dollar became the global reserve currency, and under the Bretton Woods Agreement, it was tied to gold. Every other currency was tied to the dollar. On paper, it looked safe. In practice, America printed more dollars than it had gold to back them. The illusion of prosperity reached new heights. Then, in 1971, the mask finally slipped. President Richard Nixon ended the convertibility of the dollar into gold, cutting the last connection between money and physical reality. Overnight, every currency on Earth became fiat, backed only by government decree and collective faith. It was a moment of quiet revolution. Money had become pure belief. At first, it felt like liberation. Freed from the constraints of gold, central banks could manage economies more effectively. Interest rates became their new weapon, liquidity their new tool. When growth slowed, they lowered rates to encourage borrowing. When inflation appeared, they raised them to cool demand. Each adjustment promised balance, but in truth, it only postponed correction. The 1980s and 1990s looked like golden decades of prosperity. Stock markets soared, credit expanded, and globalization created an illusion of endless opportunity. But underneath, debt was piling up faster than ever before. Every dollar of growth required $2 of new borrowing. The world was getting richer on paper and poorer in substance. When the system trembled, central banks simply printed more. The dot-com crash, the housing bubble, the global financial crisis of 2008. Each time the solution was the same: lower interest rates, inject liquidity, and convince the public that stability had returned. But every rescue came at a cost. Each intervention made the next crisis larger, the next illusion harder to sustain. In 2008, the system nearly collapsed. Banks that had fueled decades of credit expansion suddenly froze. Trillions of dollars in assets vanished in weeks. For a moment, it seemed like reality had come to collect its debt. But then came the greatest financial experiment in history: quantitative easing. Central banks around the world began creating money out of thin air, using it to buy government bonds and corporate debt. The markets recovered, but ordinary people did not. The illusion of prosperity was restored, but only for those at the top. The decade that followed was a mirage. Asset prices reached new records, billionaires multiplied, yet wages stagnated, inequality soared, and productivity flatlined. The world appeared richer than ever, but only because credit was masking decay. Then, in 2020, when global economies shut down, central banks printed more money in a single year than in the entire previous century. The numbers were surreal. Trillions created at the press of a button. The illusion entered its final phase: prosperity without production. But illusions always crack. By 2022, inflation surged across the world. Prices rose faster than incomes, currencies weakened, and the cost of living spiraled. The very medicine used to cure every crisis had become the disease itself. Central banks tried to reverse course, raising interest rates to fight inflation, but it was too late. The global economy had become addicted to cheap credit. Every rate hike threatened recession. Every pause risked more inflation. This is the paradox of modern finance. Prosperity and collapse now depend on the same drug. Central banks can no longer save the system without destroying it. The illusion they built has no off switch. And yet, the story continues. Even now, new experiments are underway. Digital currencies, monetary resets, and more centralized control over money than ever before. Each new proposal is sold as innovation, as progress, as stability. But beneath the branding, the same old mechanism remains. Create credit, inflate belief, postpone the reckoning. History offers many warnings. Rome debased its silver coins until trade collapsed. France printed paper assignats until bread cost a fortune. Germany in the 1920s flooded its economy with marks until they were worth less than the paper they were printed on. In every case, the illusion of wealth ended the same way, with the loss of trust. And trust, once gone, never returns easily. Today, global debt stands above $300 trillion. The combined wealth of every person on Earth could not repay it. Every government owes money to someone else. Yet the total debt keeps growing. The numbers no longer make sense, but the illusion survives, because it must. Without it, the system unravels. The truth is simple, but uncomfortable. Central banks did not invent prosperity. They manufactured its appearance. By replacing scarcity with credit, they redefined what it means to be rich. But real wealth is not created by printing. It's created by producing. And when production lags behind promises for too long, the illusion collapses under its own weight. 3 lessons remain. First, money without limits loses meaning. The moment creation is effortless, value becomes fragile. Second, every rescue by central banks is a deferral, not a cure. The cost of stability today is instability tomorrow. And third, no system built on belief can outlast the loss of that belief. When faith in money dies, the illusion of prosperity dies with it. So the next time you hear that the economy is booming, ask yourself, booming for whom? Is it growth or is it inflation? Is it progress or postponement? Because the real question isn't whether the illusion will end, but what will replace it when it does. Perhaps that the quiet truth history keeps trying to teach us. That prosperity built on printing is not wealth, it's waiting. And sooner or later, every illusion runs out of time.